being kind of manipulated, and the story was being spun and sensationalized. So it was just kind of on the back of that because I knew the people, I knew the community, that I just kept filming for the next 3.5 years, you know. Like, I didn't think, I never realised I'd be there that long. It was just that, you know, I said, okay, after a few months I thought, you know, it's a documentary and this is maybe a half-an-hour documentary. And then something else had happened, and something else had happened, and I just couldn't leave it, you know. And until the big solitaire came into the bay and all that kind of came to a head, you know. But since then, actually, things have changed again. Shell have gone back to the government, and they've agreed to bury half of the pipeline, to tunnel half the pipeline underneath the sandy estuary, which runs along the length of Rossport. So taking it out of Rossport into the estuary, where, you know, Willie Corduff is digging the shells at the start. So the government have given them permission for that, but Monica Muller, who was in the film, and Antashka, who are like our national trust, are taking cases against the Irish government, the Irish Planning Board, because they believe that the decision to give planning permission to Shell is illegal under Irish and European law. It's got to do with habitats directives, because and planning law, that, you know, the environmental directives weren't adhered to in terms of environmental impact statements, and Irish planning law wasn't adhered to either. So that's where it is at the moment. I mean, they've got permission to lay the pipe, but there's cases against it again. But things are quiet down in Mayo, you know. So I suppose in a few months Shell will probably come back with, you know, massive equipment and tunnel boring machines and all that. So it could all just start again like a cycle, you know. So unfortunately, like, the Irish government have no appetite to really step in and seek a proper resolution to this.
It'd be nice if anyone's got any questions. Richie's happy to.
So will you be making a part 2 in a few years' time?
I hope not. And I mean, this film was a film that shouldn't have been made, because at the start, you know, when it was announced, everybody was for the gas, and people wanted it. They weren't anti-development, but the way in which it was railroaded on them meant that they had no option but to stand up for themselves, and they've incredible resilience, you know. But what isn't in the film is kind of the elephant in the room. It's how all this came about, and we had a lot of very corrupt politicians, incompetent politicians, through the 90s.
Hasn't everybody?
Sorry?
I said, hasn't everybody?
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's just politics maybe, and we're dealing with the results of it now. You know, we've had this massive economic crash. We've had a kind of a political crisis. A lot of young people leaving the country, emigrating, and a lot of it is down to the fact that during our Celtic Tiger, our politicians, you know, basically put the resources of the state at the behest of large private interests, be it the banks, developers, oil companies, you name it. And now we're dealing with the fallout, and it's just the same in Corrib. Corrib is just a microcosm. So one thing that I did do a lot of filming on, a lot of interviews on, is the political story and historic story, how we once upon a time had a very responsible oil and gas regime. However, when Fianna Fáil, which were the party who kind of led us through the Celtic Tiger, when they got into power, they dismantled very responsible Norwegian-style oil and gas terms, and basically pretty much allowed the oil companies write their own terms. And because of that, we've given away huge swathes of our Atlantic, which is now seen as a new frontier in terms of oil and gas exploration. Because if you follow down off the west coast of Norway, down into the North Sea, and then off the west coast of Ireland, it's more difficult conditions, it's deeper, the geology is a little more fractured, but there is oil and gas there in large quantities, and it's very quickly becoming very commercial at the moment, but we've handed it all away. And now when the oil companies come to take this out, they'll pay little or no tax. I mean, a lot of industry people admit that Shell will never end up paying tax on Corrib, the way our oil and gas terms are structured. We have no royalties, no state participation. There are no conditions on the oil companies to either sell the gas in Ireland or to cap a price on the gas. It's open market. There are no conditions on employment, goods, services, anything. So it's a very, very bad deal for our country at a time when, you know, we could really use a chunk of what these resources are worth. So that is, yeah, that's the kind of, the prequel is next. But no one will fund me in Ireland. That's the thing. Like it's very hard to get funding for that. You know.
Has your film been shown in Shetland? Because they're now looking for oil and gas in the North Atlantic to the west of Shetland as opposed to the east.
Well, this is it. Remember I said about the continuing off, like down from Norway, North Sea, and they're moving more off the west of Scotland, west of Ireland, and down to the south of Ireland. And it's shown in Shetland tomorrow night, actually.
Right.
Because, and there's a curious connection with Shetland, actually, because they, back in the 70s, you probably know a lot of the history of Shetland, would you, the oil industry in Shetland? They were very clever back when the oil companies approached them in the 70s to build refineries to bring in the oil and gas on their island. They were a small community, farming and fishing, very poor, but they got this lawyer who'd been born in the Shetlands, who was very successful in London and very clever. They brought him up, and he negotiated on their behalf. And he took the position with the oil companies, with Shell mainly. Basically, Shell wanted, you know, just to buy the land off them, build their refinery and get on with it. But what he wanted on behalf of the Shetlands was that the islanders retain control of the land on which the developments, the oil and gas developments, are based, and they take a very small, maybe a penny off every barrel that's landed on the Shetlands, before costs are written off or anything. Basically, kind of a royalty for the Shetlands. And the oil companies said, no way. I mean, we're not going to go with that at all. They tried to play hardball with him. So what he said is, geez, that's great news, because nobody in the Shetlands really wants the refineries. They want to get back to their farming and fishing, so they'll be delighted when I come back and tell them that you won't go for it. And before your man had reached the door, the Shell executives were pulling them back, and they made a deal there and then. And that's provided the Shetlands, like Norway, similar circumstances. It's provided them with great funding for for social infrastructure, physical infrastructure. Ferries, schools. In Norway, you have it. Because they have a very good position when it comes to the oil and gas industry as well. That they have a 50% stake in any finds in oil and gas, and their infrastructure is first class. And they've got about 600 or 700 billion in their back pocket for a rainy day off the back of this. So, but with Shetland again, yeah, I mean, another thing, there is further drilling, as you say, off the west of Shetland, because a lot of the North Sea oil and gas is running out, so that is a big issue. Another thing up there, they want to install a lot of wind power, and the community is very divided over wind developments up in Shetland. So that's kind of, we always think, I suppose wind energy is good and it's green. Gas and oil and hydrocarbons are bad and dirty, but actually, wind energy companies often act the same way as hydrocarbon companies. Just because it's green energy, it doesn't mean it's they're not as aggressive. There's a lot of money at stake. So often you do the same problems with alternative energies that you would get with oil and gas. And in the Shetland, there is a lot of tension over the wind energy. Do we let it in or don't we? Because funnily enough, it's probably, I suppose, more intrusive, the wind energy in the Shetlands, because it's on the land. It's not being refined off sea, or it's in shallow. So there's a real division in the community there.